Casey and the Sports Doctor is brought to you by the MJ Sullivan Automotive Corner. Welcome, sports fans, to Casey and the Sports Doctor, a sports show about all sports, big and small, where you, the audience, can chime in through social media and drive the topics of conversation. I'm Casey O'Neill.
And I'm the Sports Doctor, Keith O'Brien. And as always, special thanks to Philomena's Restaurant right here in Waterford, Connecticut for their hospitality.
Now, every week you can find our question of the week on various social media sites right there on your screen, Facebook, Twitter, and now on Instagram. And always those responses will get brought up into the next show. But you can send us rants, raves, comments, questions, just about anything you can think about. So this week we're looking forward to talking about Tom Brady's decision, Tim Duncan dropping out quietly, and, well, Giancarlo Stanton dropping some bombs. But before we do that, got to pay the bills. MJ Sullivan Hyundai wants you to take the summer off from car payments. 0 payments for 6 months, with the first 3 months on them. Plus 0% financing. Wow. Stop in today for more details. MJ Sullivan Hyundai. All right, so Sports Doctor. Tom Brady just announced he is dropping his appeal and will accept his 4-game suspension. On the other side, Tim Duncan announced his retirement, ending a 2-decade career. So I ask you, which is the more important sports story?
Well, the more important sports story is Tim Duncan. The old sports story is Tom Brady. 550 days ago was the whole deflated ball versus the Indianapolis Colts. Listen, Tim Duncan did things the right way, Casey. He bowed out gracefully. In a time and age now where we seem to have a victory tour, a final lap tour, retirement party for every single professional athlete, you know, Tim Duncan handled himself with class like he's done for the past 19 years. Big ups to Tim Duncan in today's world of athletes.
Now let me give you some numbers, Sports Doctor. First of all, in my opinion, the greatest power forward of all time. 5-time NBA champion and was the MVP in 3 of those championships. A 2-time league MVP, a 15-time All-Star, 19 points, 10 rebounds. Did it in an absolutely humble way, no fanfare whatsoever, which is why in our culture we're not talking about it. This is a no-brainer. There has been no topic of conversation less important that's been talked about as much as Deflategate.
I agree.
We have wasted more money and energy and time on what amounts to a 4-game suspension. Right,
and loyalty between player, a coach, and a franchise. 19 years, same player in Tim Duncan, same coach in Greg Popovich, and that. You don't see that a lot nowadays in sports. You see, you know, players jumping for free agency. Big ups to Tim Duncan. Class act by not announcing his retirement at the beginning of the year.
Do you think Eric Mangini had any idea the dominoes he was tipping back in the day? Because without his conversation with the league, there's no Spygate, which leads to Deflategate. None of this even happens. We have a case that almost went to the Supreme Court.
And I'm tired of all of it, Casey. Casey, now I'll add this to you right now. 4 guys, 4 NBA players left from the 90s, still under contract with the retirement of Tim Duncan. Can you name those 4 guys?
So Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce.
The big ticket and the truth.
Dirk Nowitzki.
Drafted in the same year as Paul Pierce. Well, Tar Heel love for you.
And Vince Carter shooting the threes.
Vinsanity, Casey.
You know what, Tim Duncan? I think the end of the post-game era ended with you. Congratulations and thank you for 19 great years.
Class act.
All right, we're going to move on to a segment called Death is Not an Option. I'm going to give the Sports Doctor a scenario, and he has to choose which one of these scenarios he would have to take on. And death, Sports Doctor, is not an option.
I'm dying to hear what you have in store for me.
All right. How would you want your Sports Center moment? Getting your ankles broken by a Chris Dunn crossover, which we saw for the better part of a week, or getting dunked on and posterized in a viral video from one of these summer leagues where a guy's up, legs spread apart? Death is not an option.
Why am I on the receiving end? That's what I want to know. I'd rather get, you know what, I'd rather have my ankles broken by Chris Dunn because I don't want any marks on my body. If you didn't notice, I'm a pretty guy, and I don't want a ball dunking me and having myself posterized and stuff like that, or a slam dunk ball come off my forehead or something like that. Listen, if that's not an option, I'll take getting slam dunked on.
Well, listen, you got to go with the dunk. If you're going to live in infamy for the rest of your life, have it be because somebody threw a monster jam down over the top of you. People get their ankles broken all the time. That you fade away. Listen, it's better to be talked about in a bad way than not talked about at all. So you know what? I'll stand right there, and I'll take the feet right up there in my face. Throw it down on me. But at least I'll live forever in history.
Oh, boy. I'll take the broken ankles, and you know what? They'll forget all about me, and they're going to remember you getting slammed on.
They will forget all about you, not me. All right. Death is not an option. Would you rather play on the infield grass during Giancarlo Stanton's home run derby at bats, or go to the Olympics with no bug spray?
Listen, I will stand on the infield grass. I don't want the Olympics. That's sports. I want no part of it, Casey. I want no part of the Olympics. I don't want any part of it.
All right, first of all, there's the worst part about the Olympics is that 20 years from now, there's going to be a whole generation of kids named Zika.
Do people still watch the Olympics?
Well, they will this year. They're going to want to see how many people get infected with this mosquito-borne virus. But no, the difference is Zika won't kill you. If you're playing third base on the infield grass when Giancarlo stands up, you're dead 3 swings in. Have you seen what this guy did? He averaged 500 feet for his home runs.
He hit every single ball out of the park. You're standing at third base, you're not going to get any action. He's going to hit grounders to third in a home run hitting contest?
Listen, have you anyone else, by the way, noticed the 20 kids that are like 8 to 10 years old that they allow to shag these absolutely laser beams in the outfield? How has somebody not gotten domed already in a lawsuit against Major League Baseball?
Oh, boy, that's trouble out there. I mean, I thought you were one of the guys out in San Diego this week.
Well, first of all, if I was out there, I would have picked it at third base on the infield grass and probably broken something out in the outfield.
I want no part of Rio. I'll shag flies any day.
We're going to move on to a segment brand new here on Casey and the Sports Doctor called Trick or Tweet. Now, I am admittedly not on Twitter. I want no part of Twitter. I don't tweet. But I do like to play tricks on the Sports Doctor. So what I'm going to do, Sports Doctor, is I'm going to read you 2 tweets. One, which is an actual sports tweet that I found.
Sure.
And another, made up by yours truly. Let's find out if you can tell which is the trick and which is the tweet.
Stump the Sports Doctor?
Trick or tweet, Sports Doctor. At Danny, D-A-N-I, tweets, why is May weather trending? We're in September already. Why is May weather trending? We're in September already.
Okay.
I think she means Mayweather, but... Or Dig Dog tweets, everyone's flipping that Kevin Durant is a worrier. People have anxiety. Let him be a worrier. Hashtag mental health matters.
I would say the Mayweather is real, and the Kevin Durant warrior is something you just made up.
Well, that is actually, the Sports Doctor is correct on the first one. Danny wanted to know why Mayweather was trending, because he's the best boxer in his weight class forever, Danny. We're not talking about the humidity. But you know what? The second part, I think people think that Durant is a worrier. A worrier now that he's a warrior.
He is a worrying warrior. Does that make sense?
I think he's got some buyer's remorse already. I think he wished that he had gone with the Brady guy instead of going to Boston, but that's just me. All right, trick or tweet, Sports Doctor. Quote, we have learned tonight's baseball game between Northwest State and LA Tech has been canceled because the Demons Field is on fire. The Demons Field is on fire. Or, quote, the Hawks are not just on the court, they are in the gym. Tonight's game has been officially pooped out. Too much dung gone wrong.
You've got a pretty deep trick or tweet bag there, don't you, Casey? You've reached far into that one. I would say the Hawks game is real.
No, I'm afraid not. The Demons Field was actually on fire. You've heard of athletes being on fire? Well, the whole field was en fuego that night. The Hawks tweet was made up. And one last one, Sports Doctor, trick or tweet. At Magic Johnson tweeted, the only way San Antonio or Miami doesn't win the championship is if neither of them makes the finals. Or, Brock Lesnar ain't fooling no one. He may have rigged his MMA fight, but no way he beats Orton at SummerSlam. Hashtag Viper is real.
Seeing how you are a huge WWE fan, I will say that the Brock Lesnar tweet is false.
It is made up, but there is some truth to it. He did fail his MMA drug test, which you would think, why did he not fail a wrestling wellness test all these times? But you got to watch for Lesnar and the Viper Randy Orton at SummerSlam. No, Magic Johnson, the epic prognosticator, playing a little Captain Obvious. They can't win it if they don't make the finals. Thanks, Magic.
That's true, yes. Very true. Very smart guy.
Stick
to owning the Dodgers.
Stick to on the court.
Doctor's Notes, brought to you by Jordan Chiropractic. October 2nd, 1978. That's the day I fell in love with the Boston Red Sox. For better or worse, or to death do us part. It's exactly the same day that Bucky Dent hit a Mike Torres fastball over the Green Monster and into the net in left field, sending the Yankees on to the American League pennant, eventually the World Series. It was from that day moving forward, I was in for a long love-hate relationship with the Boston Red Sox. As a 9-year-old, my guy was Jim Rice. Number 14 in your program, number 1 in your heart. The power-hitting left fielder was my baseball idol on a team that I loved growing up as a kid. Following the Red Sox through 1986, we're not going to mention that. We knew what happened there. Roger Clemens came to town, and my love affair with Jim Rice kind of cooled off just a little bit. Into a new decade, the same old misery for the Sox on and off the field. Clemens run out of town by then GM Dan Duquette, and I'm searching for my new baseball idol. Just who is he? I flirted with a few guys along the way, Mo Vaughn, team kind of struggled a little bit, and it wasn't until Pedro Martinez in 1999 that I began to open up my heart to the Red Sox and fall in love with the team and the players again. Pedro was the best pitcher in baseball, and in 1999, with the All-Star game and his 17 strikeout, 1-hit performance in Yankee Stadium, it still ranks as the greatest pitching performance I had ever seen. Then quietly in 2002, in the offseason, heading into the 2003 campaign, the Red Sox acquired power-hitting first base DH David Ortiz? Who is this guy? Well, from that point on, the rest is history. David Ortiz has done everything this franchise has asked of him, and then some. He's fallen in love with the city, and I fell in love with him. 3 World Series titles, clutch hit after clutch hit, probably the best clutch hitter in the history of the Red Sox, and questionably the history of baseball. David Ortiz has done everything. He has a big, big place in my heart. It's tough to replace a guy like Jim Rice. And, we've gone to gauntlet, Clemens, Mo Vaughn, Pedro, and Big Papi retiring here this year. It leaves me to ask a question. As a fan and as Red Sox Nation, who's our next guy? Who do we fall in love with? Is it Xander Bogaerts? Is it Jackie Bradley Jr.? Well, I would say my money is going to be on Mookie Betts. He is a star in the making. He's a terrific outfielder, a lot of pop in the bat, and he seems like he has the star qualities and the personality to help carry this city on his back for many years, much like David Ortiz did. Stick around, folks. If you're a Sox fan, stay with Mookie Betts. And that, my friends, is your note from the doctor. Dr. Jordan's extensive clinical experience as a certified athletic trainer, certified sports physician, and time as a college athlete gives her a unique approach to treating athletes. She treats athletes of all ages and abilities, from beginners to first-time marathoners to professionals.
One of the most debated topics of the current high school sports world is what to make of the schools of choice, the name given to magnet and Catholic schools that can draw students from anywhere, and their place in the world with public schools, particularly in sports. Should they be playing in the same conferences? Should they be playing in the same tournaments? Really, what are their roles together? So, as always, let's ask the pro. Ledyard vice principal and an athletic director and former, that sounds so weird, football coach Jim Buonocore. Thanks for coming on Casey and the Sports Doctor.
Glad to be here, guys. Thanks for having me.
How does that ring sound to you right now? Former football coach, it's the end of July, and we're gearing things up here for the 2016 season.
Yeah, it's different. It's different. Certainly my life has changed quite a bit in terms of the day-to-day, getting my feet wet as the assistant principal. Fortunately, I've been in the role of athletic director for quite a few years now, so just combining those 2 roles, it's been very busy. Haven't really had a lot of time to think about the coaching piece, but certainly, miss it. We'll always miss it, and I'll always, have that coach inside of me. But looking forward to the new role and the upcoming school year.
Now, as athletic director of a school of choice, you have the agricultural school, and you can explain it better at Ledyard High School. You hear all the time about how schools of choice have an unfair advantage over public schools. So. First of all, if you could explain to people, in your opinion, what a school of choice really is, and then give us a little bit of how you feel about whether or not they should be playing in the same bracket as public schools.
Well, schools of choice, if you really wanted to make an argument, every school in the state of Connecticut is a school of choice. Every parent, every guardian has an opportunity to send their child anywhere that they would like to. Just looking in the ECC alone, schools of choice, right off the bat, people think of Ledyard and New London. But what they don't understand is that other schools of choice are Killingly High School, Lyman Memorial, Bacon Academy, St. Bernard High School. So schools of choice, quite frankly, could also be Waterford High School and East Lyme High School. If a parent or a guardian wanted to send their child there, they can. Whether they live in that town or not, they can choose to pay to send their child there, be a tuition student. So schools of choice, it's really a debate that has taken on kind of a new life over the last 5 to 10 years. Definitely a different feel than when us, the three of us were in high school. I'm not a huge fan of the different proposals that are coming out, particularly the newest and latest one in the sport of basketball. I'm certainly not a fan of the success multiplier that has been used in basketball and soccer. I am from the old school. The only way that you can classify schools in the state of Connecticut is by enrollment. That's the only way you can do it that's fair and objective. Otherwise, you start putting in all of these other factors, whether it be success over the last 4 years. In the new role that's coming out in basketball, there's going to be a panel of experts that are going to place schools where they deem fit. No one knows, in high school athletics how a team is going to be from year to year. It's cyclical, and teams change. Certainly there are stronger programs. One of the bigger programs that we're hearing a lot about is Sacred Heart from Waterbury, but no one talks about their football team who hasn't won a game in 4 years. So, their basketball team had some success. Good for them. But all of a sudden, because they had success at a level, Class M, it ruffled some feathers, and now here we want to move all these schools of choice up to L and double L. Not a big fan of it. I think the only way and the best way, to classify divisions in our state of Connecticut is strictly by enrollment. Just my personal feeling, and one that I feel strongly about. 2 years ago, we lost in the state final to St. Joseph, and I remember sitting at the football committee meeting in January, and a fellow committee member said to me, "Well, you shouldn't have had to play them. They get kids from this town, that town, this town." And I said, "But they have 400 boys just like I do.
Right.
They were better than us on that day. That's the way it is. If you have 400 boys and you have 400 boys, it's equal. I don't care if your 400 boys come from 8 different towns, right, and his 400 boys come from one town. The fact is, the coaches each have 400 boys to prepare and get their teams ready to compete."
Right here in our own backyard, we've got one of the bigger schools in the state in Norwich Free Academy. So they have, Stonington, they have Waterford, they have Montville on their schedule. And those are, basically the kids from Montville go to Montville High. NFA drags them for 8 or 9 towns. So is that fair as well? I mean, where would you define that as, NFA versus schools of choice?
Well, NFA is a school of 2,000 students.
Right.
They should be playing schools that have 2,000 students. Or if you want to just look at particular sports, male and female, if NFA has 1,000 boys, they should play schools that have 1,000 boys. I'm a big fan, and I was, as the sport chair of the football committee, I brought to the table the opportunity of the district model, district scheduling, and scheduling in our state, and putting schools classified and playing schools of similar enrollment. So I take out schools of choice, whether you're a Catholic school, a magnet school, an agricultural school, it doesn't matter. To me is how many boys, for example, for male sports do you have? How many females do you have for female sports? And that's how you should compete.
Right. Do the schools of choice, have an advantage over some of the other schools, like Waterford, like Stonington? And I'm just giving you a couple small examples.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Because if Ledyard High School, who has 450 girls and had a tremendous run in girls basketball for 4 years, we had 3 Division I athletes, which is very rare. And all 3, I will add, lived in the town of Ledyard. And we ended our run in the state semifinals to Capital Prep. For the last 2 years, our team has had to compete in double L competition. So this year, our team qualified for the state tournament, I sent a starting 5 of a freshman, 2 sophomores, a junior, and 1 senior, first round game in Stanford. Eventual Class XXL state champion, Division I guard who's playing at St. John's. Where do we get off going up to Stanford? We're being penalized for the success of our prior teams. You know, when you get down to it, you know, again, you can look at, you know, all of these different schools of choices and where schools are drawing students from. But the only objective way and the fair way to classify schools and to create an equal playing field is you have to go back to numbers. How many numbers does, you know, those schools have to draw from that are in that building on that given day?
I want to speak of a different number, and that's a dollar sign, which is, I think, what people think about when they think about schools of choice are their ability to let kids in from multiple communities on financial aid or scholarships or just accepting them on an application. And I think basketball is the sport where we really see it because 2 or 3 kids can make a gigantic difference. So, and I understand that anybody can go to Waterford if they want to pay the money, but that's the point. There's lots of people, particularly kids from the cities, who can't pay that kind of money. But what would you say to the person that says the team from Stanford has 3 of their starting players from New York City who are there under, you know, because they were accepted and they have financial aid or a scholarship to whatever, and, you know, Waterford's got to play, even though, yeah, they have the same number of boys, but you know, the inevitable conclusion is recruiting okay in high school sports?
No, I don't believe recruiting is okay, and we have stringent laws, you know, governed by the CIAC against recruiting. I haven't heard of a recruiting case in the last 5 to 10 years. If there are schools recruiting, then I believe schools that are aware of it, administrators that are aware of it, need to call those particular schools out and file the appropriate paperwork and follow the process. But again, if students are choosing, or if parents, guardians are choosing to send their son or daughter to a particular school for whatever reason it may be, whether it's academics, athletics, and they choose to either pay money or they choose to put them on a bus at 5:30 in the morning because, you know, it's a 30-minute ride and it's a school of choice, then so be it. I think what we're losing sight of in all of this is what athletics is about. It's about competition. It's about providing students with an opportunity to compete in a level playing field. The only way, objectively, that we can create a level playing field is by numbers. That's the only way we can do it. We can't have a panel of experts, which is what they're proposing in basketball, that are going to sit there and say, well, over the last 14 years, these are the best 40 teams in the state of Connecticut, so they're going to be in Division I. That's absurd. It's ridiculous. And it's nothing against those panel of experts. I don't know who they are. They could be the greatest, you know, people and the greatest basketball minds our state has ever produced. But they can't sit there and tell me that they know what's going on in my building and they know what type of team I have coming back. The success multiplier was a disaster. You know, you have schools like Ledyard and Nonawag playing in XXL state competition. You know, we have 371 boys and we're playing in Class XXL competition because of success of prior teams. That's not what this was all about when the CIAC began. You know,
will that change?
I don't think it's going to change. I think we're seeing exactly what you guys are talking about, the trend towards, and I don't want to use the word penalize, but the trend towards, you know, putting schools of choice, schools that can draw from multiple towns, into the upper classifications, unfortunately in all sports. And why that may be the right move for a Sacred Heart basketball, it's certainly not, I think, the right move across the board. Just look at some of these schools of choice teams that everybody was talking about. Baseball, East Catholic, they went out in the first round and they had the player of the year. They were the team that was the consensus, you know, pick to win it all. Anybody can be beat on any given day. I think what's really skewed this whole thing over the last couple of years is primarily the Sacred Heart basketball team from Waterbury. That's really what everybody is talking about. And, you know, it was just a great team. It was a great team.
I saw them twice this year. They could have beat some college teams this year.
That, you know, but I don't know how good they're going to be next year.
Right.
And I don't know if anybody knows.
Right.
Well, I will say that, you know, certainly your point about competition is well taken. I mean, New London High School's state championship when they beat Rochamel Jones and Earl Johnson doesn't happen if we separate schools because of that, and that's a good point. I think recruiting is something we go back to when we were kids. St. Bernard's was accused of recruiting as a Catholic school. I mean, there's always, New London's accused, Ledyard's accused. I mean, we're used to that. So if they had to categorize, all right, let's say that looks like that's going to be a done deal, and clearly the panel of experts is not the way that you think it should go. If they had to categorize and they're not going to use enrollment numbers, what do you think is the best way to go about trying to make some sense of the scheduling of these two types?
I think if, again, you have to start somewhere with the numbers. I don't think numbers can be thrown out the window. Certainly I think when you look at schools of choice, there are different tiers of schools of choice. I do think that a Ledyard High School and New London High School from this particular area is different than St. Joseph High School of Trumbull, in terms of being a school of choice. Catholic schools are definitely a little bit different because, again, they can draw from the entire state. Schools of choice like a New London and a Ledyard, there's only so many towns we can draw from. So there is a little bit different there. So there could be a tier level. If you want to come to me from the state of Connecticut and say, listen, because you're a school of choice and you draw from 12 towns, we're going to start you at your normal classification by enrollment, but we're going to move you up one division. Okay, I could live with that. But to tell me I'm going to bump up 2 divisions or 3 divisions in some cases now where you're going to see us start at Class S with our enrollment numbers down, I would have a big problem with that.
Who suffers the most from that, the kids?
Absolutely the kids. When I think back to when I was in high school, I played at New London. We were a Class S school. One of the first games we played my sophomore year was against East Catholic, who was ranked in the USA Today Top 25. As a student athlete at high school, we didn't care that they were a Catholic school. We didn't care that they were drawing from 30 to 40 towns. We never even thought about that. Matter of fact, we never even thought about classification. I couldn't even tell you who was L, who was M, who was S. We just wanted to play and we just wanted to compete. And I can tell you that the kids nowadays are the same way. Kids have not changed. What has happened is, as the adults, the leaders, the administrators, the coaches, that's where it's all changed at this point. And we've been tied up in this whole school of choice and this whole, who gets who, and, well, this school can draw from this many towns, and I can only get, the kids in my town. The bottom line is, if you're a coach or you're an administrator and, you want to compete and you have 400 boys and you have 400 boys, that's fair to me. I don't care where the 400 boys came from. And that's why I had no problem playing St. Joseph, and had no problem where we scheduled them this year. Week 2, they're coming to our place. If I had an issue with it, I wouldn't have scheduled them. But to me, they're the same size school. Those are the type of games we should be playing in our state.
Well, we're going to find out where this topic lands because, as you hear, there's lots of discussions about how to handle these things. But I think we asked the expert, and he's in the best position to answer it. So my last question for you is, if you were the football coach right now, what would you be doing tonight instead of coming here and hanging out with us?
I would probably be at New London. The passing league's going on right now, and this is a good distraction. And I appreciate you guys having me on so that I could give my opinion. And I know my opinion certainly is not going to be met enthusiastically in towns that have a high school where they draw from just that one town. And it's easy for folks to say, well, he gets to draw from 12 towns, so that's easy for him to say what he said. But whether I was in a high school that was only drawing from one town, and I coached in schools that only drew from one town, my feeling is still the same. There's just too many variables that get into this whole deal when you just take away from numbers. Numbers are the only true way that you can put out a product that is equal and fair for kids to go out and compete, and that's what high school athletics is about.
I think it's easy for Coach to be here on a night where the passing league is going on, but in about a month or so when the kids are on the field, he's going to be twitching a little bit, Case.
Well, you know what that means. It means football season is right around the corner, and that means that game day is almost time to start ramping up. The sports doctor and I will be bringing you high school football for game day. So we want to thank Athletic Director and Vice Principal Jim Buonocore for stopping in Casey and the Sports Doctor.
Thank you very much.
the voice of reason, brought to you by Motorsports Nation. Do you want to play at Yankee Stadium or Fenway Park? No, I know what you're thinking. I'm not talking about those places. I'm talking about the Little League fields at Mitchell Woods in New London. And when I grew up playing there, that was the question everybody asked. Where are you playing tonight? Yankee Stadium or Fenway Park? Now for me, baseball has been the thread that has tied my family together, from my grandfather to my father to me to my son AJ. Baseball is the common language that we all speak, and it's provided me with some of the greatest friendships that I've ever had. New London Legion is as much of a family for me as my own family. So it was really heartwarming for me and eye-opening and maybe a little depressing that the kids that I played Little League with and I played high school with are now becoming the parents and coaches of great Little Leaguers themselves. If you look at the Day or any of the news outlets and see the names of the kids excelling in Little League these days, they might sound awfully familiar. How about Elsie and Burroughs and Podeswa and McBride, or Kiefer or McCullough or Martinez, Chasen and Payne and Treat and Montville, Donovan and Walker. These are the names of kids that I did battle with, and I now know that Little League baseball in southeastern Connecticut is in excellent hands. But this story is a little more heartwarming for me because of New London great Isaac Lazaro and what he helped to accomplish with a committee of people in New London rebuilding Fenway Park. The Green Monster, the scoreboard, a brand new field built by the community, partnership with Mitchell College and baseball coach Travis Beausoleil, and lots of community leaders. And this July 29th, on a Friday night at 6 o'clock, I'm going to coach at Fenway Park, and my son is going to play on the same baseball field that I played on growing up. Better baseball moment? I don't know. They say you can't go home again, but maybe Little League baseball you can. Motorsports Nation in Waterford, Plainfield, and Rehoboth, Mass., offering the best deals on motorcycles, ATVs, utility vehicles, scooters, and personal watercraft. If you like discounts, you'll love Motorsports Nation. Visit them at www.motorsportsnation.com and make sure you ask for Kyle, Scott, or my man Vern. All right, well, it's time to see what you, the viewers, thought about this week's question of the week. What is your favorite sports movie of all time? And Sports Doctor, boy, did we get a lot of responses.
What a list from the viewers out there, Casey. Some movies you may have heard of, some movies you may not have heard of, Casey. I mean, everywhere from baseball to football to soccer to hockey movies, Case. Some tremendous, tremendous ones brought in by the viewers.
Well, I agree. I was really touched to see some of my old-time favorites brought in. I will say that for golf, Caddyshack was the winner over Tin Cup, and Dead Solid Perfect, a movie back from the 70s. You got Hoosiers was everyone's favorite basketball movie, but I want to give a shout out to Matt Rollins, who said The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh. Oh man, I remember that as a kid.
And Kristen says, how about A League of Their Own? And Casey, there's no crying in baseball. James says, any given Sunday, a lot of votes for Hoosiers, The Natural, Field of Dreams, and one of your favorites, Bull Durham.
Bull Durham is my favorite baseball movie because it combines the comedy of a major league with the drama of The Natural and turns it into a quintessential look at minor league baseball. But how do you forget a movie like The Natural? I walked into my wedding with the theme The Natural playing, so obviously that's a one for me.
A great movie, and one of my top 5 favorite sport movies of all time, The Natural. Roy Hobbs is the greatest there ever was, the greatest there ever will be.
I channeled the Whammer facing Roy Hobbs' Caroline Tabor last time. That's where that whole thing came from. You know, hockey got a lot of votes. People, of course, love Miracle. How can you not love Youngblood or the Mighty Ducks? But pretty much everyone agrees Slapshot is the hockey movie.
Yeah, and Caddyshack and The Longest Yard for comedy sport movies. Paul Crewe, how do you not root for Paul Crewe? And Caddyshack gives us more one-liners than your old stick, Casey O'Neill.
Tin Cup, of course, was referenced as well. But I'm going to give a shout out to a movie not everyone has seen, and one of my all-time favorite sports movies, and that is Vision Quest, the great movie about wrestling. Loudon Swain character, played by Matthew Modine, taking on Shoot. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go rent it. Vision Quest. Journey's the soundtrack. How can you go wrong?
Marjorie types in, how about the Bad News Bears? The original Bad News Bears. Great, great movie. Victory, starring Sylvester Stallone, a soccer movie, and the Sports Doctor likes it. Can you believe it?
Pele says, I do this, goal.
Raging Bull, Cinderella Man, and of course, My all-time favorite, Rocky. Boxing movies at their very best.
You know, there's no wrong answer here. Although I personally think, even though Field of Dreams might be my favorite movie of all time, you can't have Shoeless Joe Jackson batting right-handed, people. Come on, is Ray Liotta that important to the movie? It bothers me.
Only you would point out that little bit of a detail. Tanya says, how about Fever Pitch? It's a Red Sox movie. How do you not like that? And Casey, you've gone all this long without mentioning Rudy?
I can watch the scene in Rudy where they put the jerseys, Rudy plays for me, coach, over and over again, still get goosebumps. The point, Sports Doctor, is there's no wrong answer to this.
Act like a captain.
I think I am.
How about Remember the Titans? Great movie, Denzel Washington, like you said, Tin Cup, Major League.
Hilarious baseball movie. People even reference the Breaking Away, the cycling movie, Wind. If you don't know what we're talking about, no one did mention, though, ice skating movies are on there, too, but I'm not even going to reference those. Mary Gragan Rogers, if you're looking at me. My sister-in-law, Mary Gragan Rogers, I'm not bringing up an ice skating movie.
We are Marshall, Brian Song, and how could we forget Jesus? Jesus Shuttlesworth, and he's got game.
Lots and lots of great suggestions, and thank you all for submitting them. We love this segment more than anything because it's time for us to reminisce with you, the viewers. So keep sending them in. Sports Doctor, what do you got left?
Number one viewers movie, sports movie, though, hands down from the feedback we got, Hoosiers. Hands down number one by you, the viewers.
Can't argue with Jimmy Chitwood and running the picket fence on him now, can you?
Coach stays, I stay. Coach goes, I go. MJ Sullivan has a great lease deal on a 2016 Hyundai Sonata SE. No money down and only $259 a month for 36 months. Or get a lease deal on a 2017 Hyundai Elantra SE with only $2,000 down and only $175 a month for 36 months. Stop in for more details. You can see these and other summer deals always at mjsullivanauto.com.
Well, that's all for us, sports fans. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Casey and the Sports Doctor. Now, you're going to have to pay attention to that social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, because our next episode here at Philomena's Restaurant, we're inviting you, the audience, to come on down and join us and watch us film the episode, answer questions, ask questions, become a part of the experience. 2 weeks from now, with a very, very special guest. You're going to have to pay attention to social media, though, to find out those details.
And all these shows will lead up into our grand finale in August, our football show, Casey. I'm excited for the next 3 episodes.
So if you want to be a part of Casey and the Sports Doctor, always send in the questions, send in the rants, send in the comments. But in 2 weeks, come on down to Philomena's Restaurant and be a part of the filming of Casey and the Sports Doctor. As always, I am Casey O'Neill.
And I'm the Sports Doctor. See you guys next time on Casey and the Sports Doctor.
Boom.